Hello, this is Amazon Jude. I hadn't planned on doing anything today as far as reporting, but I did catch some of the talk shows this morning. Adam Schiff, who loves TV more than Mickey Mouse, was on de- defeat the press, deface the nation, like our president likes to call it, and it's true. I mean, you go on Deface the Nation and you're not on there talking good stuff about our president or any of our cabinet members. You're on there to bash the president and everything he does and anyone around him and attack him. And Adam was on there this morning, and I couldn't help but laugh to myself because I remember him for like the last 18 months going, "Oh, I got proof that Trump is winning with Russia. I got tons of proof of it. Where is it? I haven't seen any of it." Devin Nunes, chair of Intel Committee, hasn't seen any of it. He's seen a lot of evidence that Hillary and Obama were involved with Russia to the tune of $400 million to her campaign and $500,000 speeches to old Billy Bob, who, my God, what could he talk about for 20 minutes that anybody wouldn't want to dig their ears out about anyway? But, people are stupid. They thought they were buying themselves in. I mean, we're not talking about Uranium One anymore, are we? It's back to the deflect. Let's talk about Trump Jr.'s boys meeting with Natalia, whatever, Nemeninsky up in the tower. Well, she was an Obama, what do you call it, flunky. I mean, I've got photographs of her being at the White House with Obama, and Lynch got her in the country, okayed her to come and go as she pleased. So, and before the meeting, she met with Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele. And then after the meeting with Don Jr., she met with Christopher Steele. Doesn't take a genius to figure out. They were trying to figure out how to set him up. And she was the eye candy for it. Alex Jones busted that wide open. And it's the truth. So in the news today, I would suggest that you guys just, for the next 89 days, I wouldn't listen to a single thing from MSNBC to ABC to public bullshit station PBS. All they're going to do is try to deflect from the fact that they're getting busted left and right. The intel community has been busted lying under oath, spying on Americans, the illegal wiretapping of our president before he was elected, the FISA warrant abuses, and that they used a fake dossier to basically try to frame the president with that. And they used that to get FISA warrants to spy on them. All of this shit goes back to one main thing, and that is what they call fruit of the poisonous tree. Why do you think Manafort's trial isn't about anything to do with Russia? Because they don't have anything. Okay, they had to go back to 2005, which could have been done by the IRS had they wanted it. The Justice Department has had all that information since 2008. So they just had it in a little drawer somewhere. Ooh, yeah, we got Manafort now. Now we can get him to roll on Trump. So we'll go back to 2005 and we'll try him on this stuff. Well, you know what, dumbasses? Trump's going to pardon him. No matter what you do, you can give him 500 years for all that fucking matters. He knows Trump is going to pardon him. And I wouldn't blame Trump if he didn't. I think he ought to pardon him. I think he ought to pardon Flynn and anybody else that gets cooked out of these fucking bullshit Manafort or Mueller's 17 cooked up of fucking pit bull lion ass lawyers. So that's how I stand on that. Anyway, looks like some of the girls are starting to whine. April thinks she needs a bodyguard. Fuck, what she needs is Jenny Craig. John Acosta thinks he's being attacked, but he was sure shaking hands at the Trump rally until one of the guys that were there that was in the audience and took a picture of it and caught him doing it. So he looks pretty stupid now too. But he needs a bodyguard. Well, he's rich. He can afford a bodyguard. You guys need bodyguards? Get them. Who cares? But we're going to definitely protect our girls, and we're going to protect our cabinet members from now on. You start going after one of them, we're going to come after you. And I don't mean in an angry way or in an angry fashion, but we're going to exploit your faces all over the internet and show what a piece of shit you are. Anywhere, any what time we can. So you better get ready. The war is coming to your door. Here's that gal from New Jersey. I can't even say her name. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She's the male version of Obama. And that's what the Democrat Party is going to push forward this year. People like this. Listen to this crazy bitch talk.
If people pay their fair share. If corporations and the ultra wealthy, if we reverse the tax bill, but raised our corporate tax rate to 28%, if we do those two things and also close some of those loopholes, that's $2 trillion right there. If we implement a carbon tax, that's an additional amount of a large amount of revenue that we can have. And then the last key, which is extremely, extremely important, is reprioritization. Just last year, we gave the military a $700 billion budget increase, which they didn't even ask for.
Well, that's the new socialist darling from the Bronx. Let's bring in Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent and former NYPD officer, host of the Dan Bongino Show podcast. Dan, she appears to be speaking for a lot of Democrats, even though she calls herself a democratic socialist.
No such word.
Her big ideas are gutting the military and taxing the rich with different priorities. What do you think?
Yeah, Pete, she's also speaking for people who don't read books, because almost nothing she said in that clip was factually correct. Ronald Reagan actually raised a couple of taxes. When he raised those taxes, tax revenue went down. When he cut income taxes significantly, tax revenue went up. So what she's talking about raising taxes, she has very little evidence it's going to produce more revenue. Number two, she's confusing the entire military budget, Pete, with the increase. Mm-hmm. The entire military budget is around $700 billion. They didn't ask for a $700 billion increase. She's running for Congress. You understand this, right? Not only, by the way, the lies go on, or the mistruths, or whatever the focus group tested word is. Then she says, and they didn't even ask for it. General Mattis actually lobbied for the increase. Does she not know that either? Did she just make up this whole thing? I mean, at what point is she going to go on the air and say something that is factually correct? This is now what?
Be afraid of something like that in Congress. Be very, very, very afraid. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to making laws and creating the Congress putting things together again. This little bitch, 28 years old, I got shoes older than her, and my 12-year-old is smarter.
100 interviews where she's flubbed something big. This is embarrassing now.
Dan, let me just tell you, that's not the only thing she's talking about. I mean, she clearly is pointing out some of the weaknesses of the GOP. She tweeted that the GOP is weak on fighting for working class Americans, weak on crime, weak on equal rights, weak on national security, weak on rejecting racism, weak on moral courage, weak on family values. So, she says, hey, look, this is the problem with the Republican Party. What say you?
Yeah, that's just a genius tweet. Yeah, we're weak on borders. We want a border wall. That'll definitely weaken up the border. Weaken on family values. That's a fascinating new twist. Griff, is she just making this up? I mean, seriously, she may need an intervention after that tweet right here. That is insane. Why would you even write that? She doesn't even understand basic facts, by the way. When she says the thing about fair share, the top 1% of earners pay 40% of income taxes. Think federal income taxes. Think about that. 1 out of 100 people working their butts off out there is paying 40 cents of every dollar. The top 20% of earners are paying up at 70 to 80%. Now, by the way, new rules on talking about the economy since Trump is in office, and I want to thank him for this. One, we're not apologizing for hard work anymore. Number two, we don't owe you a dime more, Captain Federal Government. Not a dime. Every time we give you $1, you waste it. You flushed our Social Security down the toilet. You ruined the education system. You're drowning us in $20 trillion in debt. We're not giving you any more money. You hear what we're talking about? New rules. No mas, no more money for you. Okay? You've ruined it. You've ruined all your credibility. It's not that the government is too big. It's that it's too dumb to spend our money the right way. We'll keep it now. Thank you very much.
Well, Dan.
That's perfect, Dan. I love Dan Bongino. He's the bomb, man. And he knows where all the bodies are buried, too. And someday he's going to write an epic book and rewrite history on the Clinton and the Bushes and all those guys, because he knows a lot.
Now page 4, the global beacon of socialism. The man who personifies anti-American, anti-constitutional principles is the same man who had not delivered a major speech since leaving the office of the presidency, that is until now, Barack Obama. 44th president traveled to South Africa to proffer his warped views of world events and how he would like to see geopolitical events unfold. Yes, indeed. He took some thinly veiled swipes at President Trump, but that's to be expected. What was more stunning was his unabashed cheerleading for a radical failed ideology that runs counter to the United States Constitution. Obama goes to a foreign country to whine and complain about so-called income inequality.
Yeah.
Then he doubled down on this attack on the free markets by pushing the socialist economic heroin, basic universal income. This idea of giving people a government stipend is straight out of the mindset of Marx and Hegel. Government will give you money. Government will give you a job. Government will give you health care. Government is the solution to all. This from the man who sat in the Oval Office here in the United States for 8 years as the so-called leader of the free world.
But we can learn from the last 70 years that it will not involve unregulated, unbridled, unethical capitalism.
Stop the tape. Yeah, we can't have unbridled capitalism. Capitalism, by the way, is a term that comes from the Soviet Union, the communist era, if you will. And, of course, somebody like Barack Obama is going to use that term. It's the free markets.
Also the part where Obama seems to have gotten pretty rich for a fucking pimp daddy from Chicago who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together when he started. Now he's hobnobbing with Beyonce and Jay-Z, sitting around smoking crack cocaine all night. That's 44th president of the United States. Boy, he's something to be proud of, isn't he?
Framers of the Constitution built our society on 3 notions, and that is economic mobility, the ability to move up and down in class, the notion of separation of powers, and federalism. Economic mobility is crucial in a free market society. And so what Barack Obama is arguing for is limited, if any, economic mobility at all, at least government control of my economic mobility, my ability to rise from lower class to middle class, even though we're not a class system here in this country, although Barack Obama will say that we're not. But the economic mobility allows us to go from being poor to rich and rich to poor.
Yep.
It is crucial.
Based on your own abilities, based on your own knowledge, based on your own hard work. And this guy, you know, I would give $25 for a rat to gnaw that mole off the side of his face. He looks like a fucking little troll.
In our society, in a free market society. And Barack Obama is standing there in South Africa arguing against it.
Yeah.
Roll tape.
It also won't involve old-style command and control socialism from the top.
Stop the tape. I speak Obama-ese after analyzing this guy for 8 years out of the Oval Office. And what he's saying there, he's saying publicly, oh, we can't do socialism, but it's exactly what he's arguing in favor of.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is, we can't do it the old hammer and sickle way. We need to do it the Saul Alinsky way. So in other words, they're trading the hammer and sickle for a suit and tie.
Yeah.
Weave your way into government and destroy the free market society of the United States from within, not from without.
Exactly what our framers were afraid of, and that's why they wrote the Constitution the way they wrote it.
And he's advocating this now on a global scale. It's anarchy. It's anarchy in a suit.
Well, I hear he's running for, Secretary of the United Nations. He seems to think he's going to be the next supreme leader of the entire world. That's how big this guy's gotten. That's how big his ego has gotten. And right now, if I was President Trump, I'd be pulling security clearances and passports and put some fucking cuffs on that boy and locking him and his hoe bags up for quite a while till that white hair falls out.
Suit and tie. Roll tape.
It didn't work very well. For almost all countries, progress is going to depend on an inclusive market-based system.
Inclusive. There you go. There's another, I like to call them buzzwords. Inclusive, complete streets, Agenda 21, all of those little bonker words. Oh, what's the other one? Consensus. When you hear those words coming out of a politician's mouth, get up and walk out the room. You've already been hoodwinked.
One that offers education for every child.
Stop the tape. So essentially what he's arguing for here is an authoritarian government-run society, which is what Barack Obama was trying to impose on this country for 8 long years. He's not out there arguing for liberty and the torch of liberty and the Statue of Liberty. No, he's not arguing for freedom. He's not arguing for other nations to accept a document like the United States Constitution.
And fix their
He's
own
not
problems.
the beacon of freedom and liberty that the United States should have in a former president. He's arguing for the destruction of this country and the imposition of socialism on other nations across the globe.
That and look at, you know, what's his face today was saying, well, Chris, what's his name on Sundays? Chris Wallace, idiot. His dad's probably rolling over in his grave, listening to his kid yammer his mouth about how stupid he really is. He's sitting there yammering about, oh well, we've never started any wars. Fuck, I named off about 50 of them when he jumped on Bolton about it, going all the way back to the Persian Gulf. That's all we did, is allow our leaders to go into these countries and play kingmakers. And Obama and Clinton and Bush were the worst ones about it. Got us in a war, a 19-year war already with Iraq based on false evidence of them guys having nuclear weapons when they didn't have shit at the time. How many soldiers did we lose out of that? We didn't have a president for the last 4 years, or 4, 8, 12, 20 years until now. And that's why they're worried, because freedom is catching on. And people are realizing we don't have to live under this tyrannical bullshit that these Democrats created. We are free to choose our leaders. And if we don't get out in November and choose the right leaders for our Congress and House members, we may as well give up. Because President Trump isn't going to be able to get anything done with these fucking lackeys in office. Like this Cortez and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Them guys do pretty good with capitalism. You know, they've gotten mighty rich off the fucking taxpayer jobs, and most of them's never held a real job in their life.
Roll tape.
That protects collective bargaining and secures the rights of every worker. That breaks up monopolies to encourage competition in small and...
Notice this is all the stuff that Trump won on. What Barack Obama promised and failed to do. He worked exactly opposite of what he's saying here. And here comes President Trump, who's doing exactly what he said he was going to do when he hit office. And Barack is pissed. He's going on the campaign trail for Democrats. You know, you want to have the kiss of death, put this fucking nigger up on stage for you. I'll guarantee you get some votes. They'll be running for the fucking exit doors.
medium-sized businesses and has laws that root out corruption. And then
I think the teleprompter stopped there for a minute because he has to look over at it and catch himself. The man can't put a fucking sentence together on his own without a teleprompter or a page in front of him. Trump goes winging it, man. He goes out there, he feels the crowd out. That's why he's popular, because we know he's telling the truth. You can't make up a lie like that on the fly. But if Obama and Hillary, man, they can make up lies like you wouldn't believe. And here's one prime example, 5 minutes of Barack Obama going on an ass-kissing apology tour right after he loses the White House to Trump. So now he's out there trying to undermine him on the world stage because they got nothing left. They got nothing to run on in the country for electing these fucking Democrat liberal assholes. And now they have to attack him on the foreign policy, hence the attack on John Bolton today on Chris Wallace show. So anyway, let's finish up with this and we'll move on.
ensures fair dealing in business, that maintains some form of progressive taxation.
Want to see more videos like this?
Just go out there and research them. They're out there, guys. You just got to quit listening to the fucking Main Street media like John Acosta's and Chuck Todd's and, what's that dyke bitch, Maddow? You know, I can't figure out if she's a woman or a man, or a woman that likes a man or likes a woman, but then she wants the woman to be a man, kind of like Kate Jenner. I was a man, but now I want to fuck women. You know, I turned myself into a woman, but now I want to fuck women. You know, these guys they're everything against the Bible. Anything that has to do with God's laws or laws about law and order in this country, they hate it because they can't win without abusing the law or without abusing God's word or our Constitution.
I thought I would see a moment where Democrats are angry because a Republican has raised taxes on the rich. I never thought that would happen. And it's a measure. I mean, if there's one sort of core idea in the Democratic Party, it's the rich don't pay enough. So here, the Trump tax bill makes them pay more in certain places on the East Coast, in New York and New Jersey, and they're suing him for it. How does that work exactly?
That's because they've been built by their local officials in local taxes, double property taxes, double water bills, double fees for building anything. They've already taxed their own people so much that when they got those $10,000 a year breaks or more on their taxes, that they could continue to get their money back through the federal government, even though their local governments have overtaxed them already to excess. And listen to Karl Rove. This guy is a real loser.
Well, I think the core democratic value is social and economic justice, and I think the feeling
there's the
that
word
most of these tax cuts
social
went
and
to
economic justice.
And the evidence is pretty clear at this point. A, it's unpopular, the tax bill that passed. And B, it's not working. Most people's, the wages are flat in this country.
That's not what
and
they're
manufacturing and others, it's down.
No, that's not what they're suing over. I mean, so Andrew Cuomo, who you'd have to think is one of the front runners for the Democratic nomination in 2020, he's not a minor figure in the Democratic Party. He's suing because Trump signed a bill that raises taxes on the rich, doesn't allow the deductions from the federal tax form on state taxes. And that only affects rich people. And he's outraged by that. Did you think that you would live to be old enough to see that? A standard bearer of progressive values angry that the rich are getting soaked? Seriously.
Yeah. So the truth is that, again,
let me put my spin on it.
Was go after blue state.
Because blue states are the ones that are run by you fucking dumbass Democrats who raised all your local taxes on your people. You know, if your people had attended their city council meetings and county commissioners and told them fuckers in no uncertain terms, are we going to pay double property taxes, you fuckers would have lost power a long time ago.
Wealthy people, right? That's what it did. Invariably, it hits states like New York and New Jersey and California
and
others.
States with high property taxes. But hold on, but the fact remains that Democrats are arguing that the rich pay too much in taxes in their state. I mean, maybe they do. I mean, whatever. I'm not a liberal, so I mean, I can kind of see the wisdom in that argument. But it suggests that whatever Trump is for, they're against, and that's not really a good way to chart your course as a political party, is it?
I think that's actually a distortion. What Democrats
I know there's a brand new one in the
legislation that would indeed lower tax rates for middle class and most wage earners, and probably would have either increased or kept current rates for wealthy people. That's what Democrats would have done.
Okay, so Trump raised taxes on the rich, and the Democrats are back. Look, I'm not criticizing it for that. I get it. It's just you're not acknowledging how weird the moment is. It's very weird.
Talk to your friends. You're in New York now. Go up and down Wall Street and ask them whether they're paying higher or lower taxes. I think the answer is, notwithstanding the state local tax deduction issue, most of them got a huge tax benefit.
Well, they're all Democratic voters, as you know, the rich vote Democrat. Well, did you ever think you'd see a moment where the Democratic Party defended the dignity of hardcore pornography? When Rudy Giuliani impugned the character of Stormy Daniels, who has sex with strangers on camera, the left almost unanimously said, whoa, there's nothing wrong with that. Did you ever think we'd get to that point? I mean, what is that? Is there a huge constituency of porn workers that you guys are trying to suck up to? Like, what is that about?
I never thought we'd see a president of Air Force One deny something when he's asked a question about Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal, and his lawyer admitted.
And what does it have to do with his ability to be a president? Nothing. What does it have to do with what he's done for the economy? Nothing. This is Karl Rove. Richard Goodstein. Okay, this guy here is as bad as Karl Rove and that Bill Kristol. These guys all sit around in a room all day long trying to figure out how to pander up bullshit to distract the average voter from realizing the Democrats have nothing to offer you. Everything that Trump has promised and more has come to pass. And they have nothing to campaign on. So it's all going to be spin zone, women, whores, pretend drone strikes on Venezuela, everything they could come up with to keep you from following the true path here, which is Democrats are liberal, progressive, socialistic people. They think they are better than you, that you do not know how to vote, that you will go back onto their reservations and their plantations and be good little boys and girls girls, and hope that the government doles you out free health care, free money, free college, free food, free housing, when that is not how the world works. And it's time for you kids to wake up and crack a real history book instead of what they're feeding you in these fucking schools anymore.
That he was lying. I never actually did think we would see that.
That's true. That was a wild moment. I agree. But it didn't speak to the principle of an entire party. I mean, is there a big constituency that thinks that pornographic actors don't get the respect they're due?
In an effort to steer an election, which is criminal, you look no further than Hillary Clinton and the DNC, who financed this entire operation, who orchestrated it. So, Mr. Mueller, I encourage you to kind of flip the coin around the other way if you're capable of doing so, because I just didn't walk in an effort to generate a crisis. It's agitation propaganda. It's Saul Alinsky on steroids. It's very sharp people who know how to manipulate the media and create a problem. And it's all orchestrated. It's all linked. So if you're looking for Russian collusion, whatever that is, or let's use the right word, conspiracy, if you're looking for persons who are sending money to Russian operatives in an effort to steer an election, which is criminal, you look no further than Hillary Clinton and the DNC, who financed this entire operation, who orchestrated it. So, Mr. Mueller, I encourage you to kind of flip the coin around the other way if you're capable of doing so, because I've just demonstrated for you and explained in no uncertain terms exactly what the sequence was to this sort of non-official intelligence operation seeking to generate a crisis at the paid expense of Hillary Clinton and the DNC in an effort to steer an election. And when you look at it from that perspective, I think you have a whole new appreciation for what's really going on, whether it's in a courtroom in Alexandria, Virginia, or a Trump Tower, or in the swamp here in DC. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope that gives you a new perspective on exactly what's going on and what the real motives are behind all this, because I think those facts are so important, and the timeline and the associations. This gives you an understanding that I hope you didn't have before. I'm Chris Farrell on Watch.
If I wanted America to fail, to follow, not lead, to suffer, not prosper, to despair, not dream, I'd start with energy. I'd cut off America's supply of cheap, abundant energy. I couldn't take it by force, so I'd make Americans feel guilty about using the energy that heats their homes, fuels their cars, runs their businesses, and powers their economy. I'd make cheap energy expensive, so that expensive energy would seem cheap. I would empower unelected bureaucrats to all but outlaw America's most abundant sources of energy. After banning its use in America, I'd make it illegal for American companies to ship it overseas. If I wanted America to fail, I'd use their schools to teach one generation of Americans that their factories and their cars will cause a new ice age, and I'd muster a straight face so I could teach the next generation that they're causing global warming. When it's cold out, I call it climate change instead. I'd imply that America's cities and factories could run on wind power and wishes. I'd teach children how to ignore the hypocrisy of condemning logging, mining, and farming while having roofs over their heads, heat in their homes, and food on their tables. I would never teach children that the free market is the only force in human history to uplift the poor, establish the middle class, and create lasting prosperity. Instead, I demonize prosperity itself, so they will not miss what they will never have. If I wanted America to fail, I would create countless new regulations and seldom cancel old ones that would be so complicated that only bureaucrats, lawyers, and lobbyists could understand them. That way small businesses with big ideas wouldn't stand a chance. And I would never have to worry about another Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, or Steve Jobs. I would ridicule as flat earthers those who urge them to lower energy costs by increasing supply. And when the evangelists of common sense try to remind people about the laws of supply and demand, I'd enlist the sympathetic media to drown them out. If I wanted America to fail, I would empower unaccountable bureaucracy seated in a distant capital to bully Americans out of their dreams and their property rights. I'd send federal agents to raid guitar factories for using the wrong kind of wood. I'd force homeowners to tear down their own homes built on their own land. I'd make it almost impossible for farmers to farm, miners to mine, loggers to log, and builders to build. Because I don't believe in free markets, I'd invent false ones. I'd devise fictitious products like carbon credits and trade them in imaginary markets. I'd convince people that this would create jobs and be good for the economy. If I wanted America to fail, for every concern I'd invent a crisis, and for every crisis I'd invent a cause, like shutting down entire industries and killing tens of thousands of jobs in the name of saving spotted owls. And when everyone learned the stunning irony that the owls were victims of their larger cousins and not people, it would already be decades too late. If I wanted America to fail, I'd make it easier to stop commerce than to start it, easier to kill jobs than create them, more fashionable to resent success than to seek it. When industries seek to create jobs, I'd file lawsuits to stop them, and then I'd make taxpayers pay for my lawyers. If I wanted America to fail, I would transform the environmental agenda from a document of conservation to an economic suicide pact. I would concede entire industries to our economic rivals by imposing regulations that cost trillions. I would celebrate those who preach environmental austerity in public while indulging a lavish lifestyle in private. I convince Americans that Europe has it right and that America has it wrong. If I wanted America to fail, I would prey on the goodness and the decency of ordinary Americans. I would only need to convince them that all of this is for the greater good. If I wanted America to fail, I suppose I wouldn't change a thing.
Let's listen to a little bit of President Trump's.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. Putin,
I think that we made the first important Finnish leadership for what they've done. I know that we've caused some inconvenience to Finland, and we apologize for it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. Too often in both recent past and long ago, we have seen the consequences when diplomacy is left on the table. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, the United States and Russia were able to maintain a strong dialogue. But our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago. I really believe that. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage, but that would not accomplish anything. As president, I cannot make decisions on foreign policy in a futile effort to appease partisan critics or the media or Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics.
That was epic.
As president, I will always put what is best for America and what is best for the American people. During today's meeting, I addressed directly with President Putin the issue of Russian interference in our elections. I felt this was a message best delivered in person. Spent a great deal of time talking about it, and President Putin may very well want to address it, and very strongly, because he feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. We also discussed one of the most critical challenges facing humanity, nuclear proliferation. I provided an update on my meeting last month with Chairman Kim on the denuclearization of North Korea, and after today, I am very sure that President Putin and Russia want very much to end that problem, going to work with us, and I appreciate that commitment. The President and I also discussed the scourge of radical Islamic terrorism. Both Russia and the United States have suffered horrific terrorist attacks, and we have agreed to maintain open communication between our security agencies to protect our citizens from this global menace. Last year, we told Russia about a planned attack in St. Petersburg, and they were able to stop it cold. They found them, they stopped them, there was no doubt about it. I appreciated President Putin's phone call afterwards to thank me. I also emphasized the importance of placing pressure on Iran to halt its nuclear ambitions and to stop its campaign of violence throughout the area, throughout the Middle East. As we discussed at length, the crisis in Syria is a complex one. Cooperation between our two countries has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. I also made clear that the United States will not allow Iran to benefit from our successful campaign against ISIS We have just about eradicated ISIS in the area. We also agreed that representatives from our national security councils will meet to follow up on all of the issues we addressed today and to continue the progress we have started right here in Helsinki. Today's meeting is only the beginning of a longer process, but we have taken the first steps toward a brighter future, and one with a strong dialogue and a lot of thought. Our expectations are grounded in realism, but our hopes are grounded in America's desire for friendship, cooperation, and peace. And I think I can speak on behalf of Russia when I say that also. President Putin, I want to thank you again for joining me for these important discussions and for advancing open dialogue between Russia and the United States. Our meeting carries on a long tradition of diplomacy between Russia, the United States, for the greater good of all. And this was a very constructive day. This was a very constructive few hours that we spent together. It's in the interest of both of our countries to continue our conversation, and we have agreed to do so. I'm sure we'll be meeting again in the future, often, and hopefully we will solve every one of the problems that we discussed today. So, again, President Putin, thank you very much.
Господа президенты, сейчас журналист, distinguished president. Now the journalists would have a chance to ask two questions, two sets of questions each. First, the Russian journalist will ask the question. Please give your affiliation. Good afternoon. My name is Alexei Meshkov, Interfax Information Agency. I have a question to President Trump. During your recent European tour, you've mentioned that the implementation of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline makes Europe a hostage of Russia, and you suggested that you could free Europe from this by supplying American LNG. But this cold winter actually showed that the current mechanism of supply of fuel to Europe is quite viable. At the same time, as far as I know, US had to buy even Russian gas for Boston. I have a question. The implementation of your idea has a political tinge to it, or is it a practical one? Because there will be a gap formed in the supply and demand mechanism, and first it's the consuming countries who will fall into this gap. And the second question, before the meeting with President Putin, you called him an adversary, a rival, and yet you expressed hope that you will be able to bring this relationship to a new level. Did you manage to do this?
Actually, I called him a competitor, and a good competitor he is. And I think the word competitor is it's a compliment. I think that we will be competing when you talk about the pipeline. I'm not sure necessarily that it's in the best interests of Germany or not, but that was a decision that they made. We'll be competing. As you know, the United States is now, or soon will be, but I think it actually is right now the largest in the oil and gas world. So we're going to be selling LNG, and we'll have to be competing with the pipeline. And I think we'll compete successfully, although there is a little advantage locationally. So I just wish them luck. I mean, I discussed with Angela Merkel in pretty strong tones, but I also know where they're all coming from. And they have a very close source. So we'll see how that all works out. But we have lots of sources now, and the United States is much different than it was a number of years ago when we weren't able to extract what we can extract today. So today we're #1 in the world at that. And I think we'll be out there competing very strongly. Thank you very much.
Yeah. If I may, I throw in some 2 cents. We talked to Mr. President, including this subject as well, we are aware of the stance of President Trump, and I think that we, as a major oil and gas power, and the United States is a major oil and gas power as well, we could work together on regulation of international markets, because neither of us is actually interested in the plummeting of the prices. And the consumers will suffer as well, and the consumers in the United States will suffer as well, and the shale gas production will suffer, because beyond a certain price bracket, it's no longer profitable to produce gas. But nor we are interested in driving prices up, because it will drain juices, life juices, from all other sectors of the economy, from machine building, etc. So we do have space for cooperation here. That's the first thing. Then about the Nord Stream 2, Mr. President voiced his concerns about the possibility of disappearance of transit through Ukraine, and I reassured Mr. President that Russia stands ready to maintain this transit. Moreover, we stand ready to extend this transit contract that is about to expire next year, in case, if the dispute between the economic entities dispute will be settled in the Stockholm Arbitration Court.
Very well. This goes to Jeff Mason from Reuters.
Thank you. Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. So we have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. It was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily. And frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it. But the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
That's 2 minutes. Ah.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well. Why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Well, I'm going to let the president answer the second part of that question. But as you know, the whole concept of that came up perhaps a little bit before, but it came out as a reason why the Democrats lost an election, which frankly, they should have been able to win because the Electoral College is much more advantageous for Democrats, as you know, than it is to Republicans. We won the Electoral College by a lot, 306 to 223, I believe. And that was a well-fought battle. We did a great job. And frankly, I'm going to let the president speak to the second part of your question. But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. And every time you hear all of these, 12 and 14, it's stuff that has nothing to do. And frankly, they admit these are not people involved in the campaign. But to the average reader out there, they're saying, well, maybe that does. It doesn't. And even the people involved, some perhaps told misstories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lying. There was no lying. Somebody else said there was.
For General Flynn.
We ran a brilliant campaign, and that's why I'm president. Thank you.
As to who is to be believed and to who is not to be believed, you can trust no one if you take this. Where did you get this idea that President Trump trusts me or I trust him? He defends the interests of the United States of America, and I do defend the interests of the Russian Federation. We do have interests that are common. We are looking for points of contact. There are issues where our postures diverge, and we are looking for ways to reconcile our differences, how to make our effort more meaningful. We should not proceed from the immediate political interests that guide certain political powers in our countries. We should be guided by facts. Could you name a single fact that would definitively prove the collusion? That this is utter nonsense. Just like the president recently mentioned. Yes, the public at large in the United States had a certain perceived opinion of the candidates during the campaign, but there's nothing particularly extraordinary about it. That's the usual thing. President Trump when he was a candidate, he mentioned the need to restore the Russia-US relationship, and it's clear that a certain part of American society felt sympathetic about it, and different people could express their sympathy in different ways. But isn't that natural? Isn't it natural to be sympathetic towards a person who is willing to restore the relationship with our country, who wants to work with us? We heard the accusations about the Concord country. Well, as far as I know, this company hired American lawyers, and the accusations doesn't have a fighting chance in the American courts. So there's no evidence when it comes to the actual facts. So we have to be guided by facts and not by rumors. Now let's get back to the issue of these 12 alleged intelligence officers of Russia. I don't know the full extent of the situation, but the President Trump mentioned this issue, and I will look into it. So far, I can say the following. The things that, off the top of my head, we have an existing agreement between the United States of America and the Russian Federation, an existing treaty that dates back to 1999. The mutual assistance on criminal cases. This treaty is in full effect. It works quite efficiently. On an average, we initiate about 150 criminal cases upon request from foreign states. For instance, the last year, there was one extradition case upon the request sent by the United States. So this treaty has specific legal procedures we can offer that the appropriate commission headed by Special Attorney Mueller, he can use this treaty as a solid foundation and send an official request to us so that we would interrogate, we would hold a questioning of these individuals who he believes are privy to some crimes. And our law enforcement are perfectly able to do this questioning and send the appropriate materials to the United States. Moreover, we can meet you halfway, we can make another step. We can actually permit official representatives of the United States, including the members of this very commission, headed by Mr. Mueller, we can let them into the country and they will be present at this questioning. But in this case, there's another condition. This kind of effort should be a mutual one. Then we would expect that the Americans would reciprocate and they would question officials, including the officers of law enforcement and intelligence services of the United States, whom we believe who have something to do with illegal actions on the territory of Russia. And we have to request the presence of our law enforcement.
Epic. Bring it up to speed.
Things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping, so we have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important, not even saying from the standpoint.
Believe your statement that Russia did not.
Upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well. Why should Americans and
I didn't know the president. There was no.
He defends the interests of the United States of America, and I do defend the interests of the Russian Federation. We do have interests that are common. We are looking for points of contact. There are issues where our postures diverge, and we are looking for ways to reconcile our differences, how to make our effort more meaningful. We should not proceed from the immediate political interests that guide certain political powers in our countries. We should be guided by facts. Could you name a single fact that would definitively prove the collusion? This is utter nonsense. Just like the president recently mentioned. Yes, the public at large in the United States had a certain perceived opinion of the candidates during the campaign, but there's nothing particularly extraordinary about it. That's the usual thing. President Trump, when he was a candidate, he mentioned the need to restore the Russia-US relationship, and it's clear that a certain part of American society felt sympathetic about it, and different people could express their sympathy in different ways. But isn't that natural? Isn't it natural to be sympathetic towards a person who is willing to restore the relationship with our country, who wants to work with us? We heard the accusations about the Concord country. Well, as far as I know, this company hired American lawyers, and the accusations doesn't have a fighting chance in the American courts. So. Of disappearance of transit through Ukraine, and I reassured Mr. President that Russia stands ready to maintain this transit.
The most important thing that we can be working on, but I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the
Thank you.
They will literally have their heads explode.